It was Saturday morning, and I decided to treat myself to some much-needed retail therapy. I put on my favorite outfit and headed to the mall, excited to browse the shops and pick out some new clothes. Little did I know, my shopping trip was about to be ruined by the most entitled person I have ever met. As I walked into the mall, I noticed a woman in her late 30s arguing with a sales associate at a jewelry store. Her name was Karen, and she was wearing a bright pink tracksuit that was too tight for her body. I could tell she was not happy as she was yelling at the poor sales associate about the price of a necklace. "I demand to speak to the manager," Karen shouted, her voice echoing through the mall. I rolled my eyes and walked away, not wanting to be anywhere near this entitled woman. I headed to my favorite store and started to look through the racks, hoping to find something cute to wear for an upcoming party. As I was browsing, I heard someone clear their throat behind me. I turned around and saw Karen standing there, her arms crossed and a scowl on her face. "Excuse me, miss," Karen said, "but I was here first." I raised an eyebrow and looked around, confused. "I'm sorry, what?" "This is my store," Karen said, gesturing around her. "I was here first and I demand you leave." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This woman was insane. "Actually, Karen, this is not your store. It's a public place and we can all shop here." Karen scoffed. "I don't have time for this. Move out of my way." I decided to ignore her and continued to browse through the clothes. Karen, however, was not going to give up that easily. She started to pull clothes off the rack, throwing them on the floor and making a huge mess. "Excuse me," I said, getting angry. "What do you think you're doing?" "I'm making room for myself," Karen replied, a smug look on her face. "I need to try on some clothes." I shook my head in disbelief. "That's not how you behave in public. You're making a mess and disturbing everyone else's shopping experience." Karen rolled her eyes. "Whatever. I do what I want." I decided I had had enough. I walked over to Karen and picked up the clothes she had thrown on the floor. "You need to learn how to behave in public, Karen. Your entitled behavior is not welcome here." Karen's face turned bright red. "How dare you speak to me like that? Get out of this store immediately." I laughed. "I'm not going anywhere. You're the one who needs to leave." Karen started yelling security and took her phone, and she was filming me. As Karen continued to yell and film me, I noticed a security guard walking towards us. I felt relieved, thinking that finally someone would be able to handle this entitled woman. To my surprise, the security guard walked straight up to me and said, "Excuse me, miss, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave the mall." "What? Why?" I asked, confused. "Karen here has reported that you are causing a disturbance and have been harassing her," the security guard explained. I couldn't believe it. This woman had completely twisted the situation to make it seem like I was the problem. That's not true. She was the one causing a scene and making a mess. The security guard shook his head. "I'm sorry, miss, but I have to ask you to leave." I gathered my things and headed towards the exit, feeling angry and frustrated. As I walked past Karen, she smirked at me, clearly enjoying the situation. As I made my way towards the exit, I saw Karen making her way back to the jewelry store, still smirking to herself. I couldn't just leave it at that. I needed to do something to get back at her for her entitled behavior and the way she had twisted the situation to make me look bad. I noticed that Karen had dropped a piece of cloth that she had been holding as she stormed out of the store. It was a beautiful blue scarf, and I could tell she really wanted it. I picked it up and decided to have a little fun. As Karen was walking towards the jewelry store, I quickly walked up to her, holding the scarf out in front of her. "Excuse me, Karen," I said, trying to sound as sweet as possible. "I think you dropped this." Karen's face lit up when she saw the scarf in my hand. "Oh, thank you. I've been looking for that everywhere." I smiled back at her. "No problem at all. But before you take it, I just wanted to let you know that this scarf is not for entitled people like you. It's for people who are kind, respectful, and don't treat others poorly." Karen's face immediately turned red with anger. "How dare you? Give me my scarf!" I shook my head. "No, Karen, you don't deserve it. You need to learn that treating others with respect and kindness is much more important than getting your way all the time. And by the way, this is not your scarf anymore." "Give me back my scarf." "It's mine now. I paid for it, and matter of fact, I'll wear it right now." With that, I turned around and walked out of the mall, leaving Karen livid. I was feeling satisfied that I had stood up to Karen and her entitled behavior. It may not have been the retail therapy I was expecting, but it was definitely a memorable shopping trip. I had always loved taking walks in the park, especially on sunny days like this one. I grabbed my book, put on my headphones, and headed out the door. I was ready for a peaceful afternoon, but little did I know that my day was about to take a turn for the worse. As I walked through the park, I noticed a group of teenagers playing music loudly on a speaker. I didn't mind it at first, but as I got closer, I could hear the profanity in the lyrics. I tried to ignore it, but then I saw an older woman walking towards them. "Excuse me, could you please turn down the music?" she asked politely. The teenagers just laughed at her and turned the music up even louder. "Come on, lady. It's a public park. We can play whatever we want," one of them said. I rolled my eyes and continued walking. I didn't want to get involved, but then I heard the woman call out for help. "Please, someone help me." I turned around and saw the teenagers had taken her bag and were running away. I immediately ran after them, trying to catch up. "Hey, give that back!" I yelled. They turned around and sneered at me. "Mind your own business, lady," one of them said. I didn't care. That woman needed her bag back, and I wasn't going to let them get away with stealing it. I chased after them, but they were too fast. They disappeared into the crowd, and I was left standing there panting and angry. I decided to go to the police station and report what had happened. As I walked in, I saw a familiar face sitting in the lobby. It was Sarah, a woman I had met a few months ago at a local charity event. She was always talking about her expensive lifestyle and designer clothes. "Hey, Sarah," I said, trying to be friendly. "Oh, hi," she said, not even looking up from her phone. I sat down next to her and waited for my turn to speak with the officer. Sarah continued to scroll through her Instagram feed, occasionally commenting on a post. "I can't believe the nerve of some people," I said, still angry about what had happened in the park. "What happened?" she asked, finally looking up. I explained what had happened with the teenagers and the woman in the park. "That's awful," she said, looking sympathetic. "But some people just feel entitled to do whatever they want." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Well, like those teenagers. They probably feel like they're entitled to play their music and act however they want in a public space," she said with a shrug. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was she actually defending them? "I don't think anyone is entitled to steal someone's bag," I said sarcastically. Sarah rolled her eyes. "Well, you're just being naive. People like that are everywhere. You can't change them." I decided to ignore her and focus on talking to the officer. After I finished giving my report, I left the station feeling frustrated. I couldn't believe Sarah's attitude towards what had happened. A few days later, I was at a coffee shop, working on my laptop when Sarah walked in. She was wearing a fur coat and sunglasses, even though it was a warm day outside. I tried to avoid her, but she spotted me and walked over. "Hey, have you seen the new Louis Vuitton bag that just came out? It's amazing," she gushed. I sighed. "No, I haven't. Look, Sarah, can we talk about what you said the other day?" Sarah just waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, that. I was just telling the truth. You can't expect everyone to be polite and considerate all the time." I was getting angry. "That's not the point, Sarah. You were defending those teenagers who stole from that poor woman." Sarah rolled her eyes. Why are you still on about that? It's not like you can do anything about it now. Just let it go." I couldn't believe how callous she was being. "Let it go. That woman was robbed and you're acting like it's no big deal. You need to check your privilege, Sarah." Sarah looked at me like I had just insulted her. "Check my privilege. What does that even mean?" "It means you need to realize that not everyone is as fortunate as you are. You have no idea what it's like to struggle or to be a victim of crime. You need to show some empathy and stop acting so entitled," I said firmly. Sarah looked like she was about to argue back, but then she paused. I guess you're right. I never really thought about it that way." I could tell she was finally starting to understand. It's important to remember that we're all in this together, Sarah. We need to support each other and show kindness, even to strangers. I wasn't sure how I ended up in this situation, but there I was, standing in the middle of a crowded mall face to face with an entitled Karen. She was screaming at me, demanding that I give her my spot in line for the newest iPhone. Let me back up a bit. My name is James. I'm 25 years old and I'm just your average guy. I work at a coffee shop and I'm saving up to go back to school. I was at the mall that day to buy a birthday present for my sister. I had been waiting in line for hours to get the new iPhone, which my sister had been asking for. It was finally my turn to purchase the phone when Karen showed up. Karen was in her late 40s with a bob haircut and a face that could turn a sunny day into a thunderstorm. She waltzed right up to me and demanded that I give her my spot in line because she had to pick up her kids. When I politely refused, she started to get aggressive. "You young people are so entitled," she screeched. "I need that phone more than you do. I have a busy life and important calls to make." I rolled my eyes and turned away from her. That's when she grabbed me by the arm and tried to yank me out of line. I pulled away and turned to face her. "Listen, lady, I've been waiting here for hours. I'm not giving up my spot for you." Karen wasn't having it. She continued to scream and shout, drawing the attention of everyone around us. "Excuse me, can I help you too?" A security guard had appeared out of nowhere, clearly ready to defuse the situation. Karen immediately turned on the charm, pretending to be the innocent victim. "This young man is being very rude to me. He won't give up his spot in line for me, even though I have important things to do." The security guard turned to me for my side of the story. "Look, I've been waiting here for hours. I'm not giving up my spot for her. It's first come, first served." The security guard nodded and turned to Karen. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave this area. You're causing a disturbance." Karen wasn't happy about being told to leave, but she didn't argue. She stormed off, muttering to herself about lazy millennials. I shook my head in disbelief and turned back to the cashier to complete my purchase. As I walked out of the store with my new iPhone, I couldn't help but think about how entitled some people can be. I didn't realize it at the time, but that encounter with Karen would become a turning point in my life. I had always been a bit of a pushover, always eager to please people and avoid conflict. But Karen's entitled behavior had shown me that sometimes you need to stand up for yourself and not let people walk all over you. From that day on, I made a conscious effort to be more assertive and to not let people take advantage of me. It wasn't always easy, but I knew that it was the right thing to do. As for Karen, I never saw her again, but I like to imagine that someday she'll learn her lesson and realize that the world doesn't revolve around her. Until then, I'll just keep my distance from entitled people like her.